Hi, my name is Josh Malik. I probably will start doing a few drum updates and updates in general, as because with the videos I make in my drumming drum covers, I do show some more esoteric things, and people might be interested to know what inspires me to show those things. And so some of the things that I do show are based on my own spiritual experiences, not so much physical, but spiritual journeys into other places and dimensions, etc. Yeah, so with my spiritual journey, I did begin that when I was about 9 years old. I started studying astral projection, so I did successfully separate my soul from my body and walked. I remember I walked down the street or floated down the street as a child. So that's the only time I've ever actually fully separated my consciousness from my body. But after I did that, I never really tried again. But as time went on, I learned how to simultaneously project my spirit into other places while remaining a bit conscious or sleep-like with my body. And so from there, I've been able to remote view certain places and certain things outside of the world, etc. I'm not sure if it's possible to like relay numbers or anything like that through that form, but it definitely is possible to connect with other spiritual beings or other beings in the world or outside of the world. And then it's also possible, I do believe, to communicate with other people as well to an extent telepathically. But once again, I don't think I'm not sure if it's possible to relay numbers, etc., or direct messages. It's mostly like you can just sense whether someone likes you or doesn't like you from a distance if both of you are tuned on the same wavelength, etc. So with that being said, it is quite possible that the machines could communicate with people as well. So that could explain why some people go crazy. Maybe if they if there's some sort of AI system communicating with them, maybe they see visions or think they're communicating with God, etc. So it is a possibility. So yeah, I guess my belief system stems similar to the Babylonian belief system that this planet was initially a large planet that was destroyed, and then a large chunk of that planet was taken, and then our world was terraformed with a force field of sorts placed around it that doesn't allow us to leave or anyone else to come in to the world unless it's unlocked from the inside. And so as for unlocking it from the inside, I suppose only people of certain genetic predisposition and spiritual disposition would be able to proceed to unlock that. So with my spiritual system, when I was 18, I began practicing the Golden Dawn system because I was kicked out of my house as soon as I turned 18, and I was working at a steel factory. And then so I had lots of money to spend, so I ended up acquiring a large occult library, which ended up at a later time being burned in a bonfire when I went to Bible college. But yeah, with that, I practiced the Golden Dawn system for 5 years methodically. I still didn't get to the higher levels of it, but I got far enough in it to learn certain aspects of spirituality. Like for instance, some of the rituals I did was to remove the effects of astrology and the planets on me and things like that. But with that, I don't recall ever communicating with any deities or anything, even though that's the end goal of it with the Golden Dawn system is to connect with the Watchers, which are mentioned in the Bible. And in this day, they would be probably considered similar to the Greys in terms of races. So it was in the summer of 2013 when I took off from the city I lived in and decided that I would go live in the wilderness. So I bought a bunch of survival equipment, without a tent or anything. Just survival equipment, a bow, a large long knife, and a bear mace, and some food to bring with me. And then I set out to go live on the side of a mountain, which I did. And I'd always planned to do this when I was younger. So, but with that, I literally lived in the vicinity of a grizzly bear and a mountain lion simultaneously. So the grizzly bear came up to my camp twice during the day, and then the mountain lion was apparently hunting or stalking me at night, and they have night vision, but all I heard was growling in the middle of the night. So yeah, I was definitely being protected by angelic forces apparently. But with the grizzly bear, like it even came up to my camp and sat looking in my direction. I was wearing full camouflage, and so I'm not sure if it saw me. But yeah, as it was sitting, it was pretty much the same height as me, and it just ate a bush and then turned around and went back the other way. So I was lucky that it didn't continue forward towards me. Otherwise, I would have had to use the bear mace, etc. So with that, from that point, I ended up traversing up the side of a mountain in the middle of the night, and yeah, I saw some interesting things. Like I saw a blue orb come out of the lake and scan the forest, and definitely scanned me. And so I figured that was some sort of high-tech government surveillance, and it might have been, but it was definitely mechanical, whatever it was. I don't believe it was. It might have been controlled by ETs, but it was definitely a blue orb that seemed to have mechanical attributes. And so that was the first few nights of that trip in summer of 2013. And then from there, I stayed at a retreat center where I was able to practice more of my Golden Dawn system. And that was the point that marked where I began hunting spiritually and engaging in spiritual warfare, just because I was so spooked being on my own out there amongst all the biker gangs and everything. And but yeah, where I was staying, it was 2 hours away from even the nearest gas station, so I was way out in the boonies. And but yeah, so that's where I began to hone my spiritual system. And then eventually, after it was a 30-day trip where I stayed in various different towns, and then eventually came back to the city. And from there, it was almost like the movie Pet Sematary, where someone comes back from the dead, but even though they come back from the dead, they come back not quite the same, more spiritually aggressive and darker. And and that was explained by when I was staying on the side of the mountain. It turned out that the place that I just happened to be staying at was actually a spiritual pilgrimage of ancient natives in the area. And the mountain was called Loki's Pass. And it was only called that in a brochure, but when you look at it on Google, it's called Tooth Ridge. And so yeah, I must have walked through some sort of a portal, or maybe I was drinking the stream water through a filter, but it might have been some algae or bacteria in the stream water that was causing some sort of hallucinations. But yeah, I saw demonic forces and definitely got lost in the forest for a bit there. And strangely enough, I was led back to my camp through what I thought was a human voice, but it turned out to be a raven mimicking a human voice. And I think it was saying, "Help me, help me." So it was literally, mimicking a human. So yeah, that's where, the spiritual warfare aspect began, was in 2013. And so, I did end up fighting a sort of a vigilante style, just because I felt that financial aspects had been taken away from me at a young age. And so I wanted revenge for it. And so, I hunted down the people that I thought were responsible, and then I became a bit infamous as a sort of vigilante, spiritual vigilante. And so the reason that financial aspects were blocked from me at a young age is because, I did, when I was younger, I did take some sort of hallucinogenic substances that caused me also to have a near-death experience, and then become possessed by some sort of demonic force. And that was at a young age. And I remember there was even physical things happening. Like at one point, this was when I was 18 or 17 or 18, and had like 20 crows just living on top of my house and all this weird stuff. So when I was born, I had the umbilical cord, I think, was strangling me, and I had some sort of abnormality with the way my bone system was forming. So the doctors actually thought I would be partially like retarded, but I actually turned out to have a higher IQ than everyone in my family, except for my grandfather, as he has an IQ of 180. So my IQ is, depending on the test I take, between 130 and 138. And but yeah, so I was and considered to have some sort of a mental disability due to the way my skull formed. Uh, yeah, I think it was similar to a soft brain or something of the sort, microcephaly. And yeah, I have continued to grow and overcome it every way I can. So then at some point, yeah, I did end up moving into a building that was sort of like a halfway house for criminals. I had never had a criminal record myself or was involved with it, but it was a halfway house for people coming out of jail or people that just were facing poverty. And so, yeah, I lived there for 3 years, and it was an interesting building. It had a lot of history. It was used during World War One by the military, and it was a railroad building, a railroad place that was used to be a brothel. And so, yeah, I further honed my spiritual aspects while living there as well. And at many points became a pretty high intensity because people were always trying to fight me physically while I was picking them off one by one spiritually. And yeah, so that's always, as a circle of violence would have it, has coalesced further and further around the world. But yeah, it all stemmed from people hating me just because I was supposed to be mentally disabled, and that, and then trying to stop me from being financially successful, and me seeking revenge for it and getting that revenge. So I've undergone quite a bit of a physical transformation in the last 2 years, as I could show in the photo. And so as for that, yeah, it's quite something because yeah, I did have a spiritual breakthrough where other souls were also involved as well. Because back to the astral projection and the remote viewing, I did connect with other spiritually advanced souls, and from there, yeah, we were able to pass certain barriers that were protected by angelic forces, and from there attain certain wishes and gifts. And so one of my things that I wished for was that my physical deformation would be less pronounced, and that I'd be look at least a little more normal. So yeah, I've continued to grow in that regard, and it seems like in the year's time, I've seen true results. So with the Bible, I do like to study the Bible from time to time. So it does mention the story of Esau and Yaakov or Jacob, and how Jacob had great blessings and great wealth in the world, where Esau was deprived of all blessings and had to live by the sword. So with that scripture, there is a turning point where you could focus on that scripture, and then the next scripture states that he sought revenge against his brother. And that's led to a lot of troubles throughout the world because the two brothers led to different races that probably fought throughout time as well. But it seems like with the world today, we've come back to that point again. But this time we're just at the point where, yeah, it's a similar story, but the brothers get along with each other and work together for the world. So the reason I bring up Esau, the story of Esau, is because it states in the Bible that he comes to gain control of Mount Siri, which is a spiritual mount, which is similar akin to many occult mysteries about transcending some sort of a spiritual mount. And yeah, so it can even possibly be likened to Mount Olympus. And so, yeah, when I first traversed this spiritual mount, I was guided by angelic forces. I was with another spirit at the time. It was a platonic connection, and yeah, we just it was seemed to be all a random event how we ended up traversing that barrier. But with that spirit, I was with that soul who is a physical being, and there is other physical beings involved as well. Yeah, it turned out that person seemed to be the spirit of Aphrodite. And so I state that because I do believe the demigods of Greek mythological proportion are walking the world in the flesh, and maybe they always are. Through reincarnation, it's hard to say. They probably come at different times. But as for myself, I just consider myself to be a sort of messenger and means to getting to different spiritual places. And so that comes back to the mental thing that I was born with. It makes me more childlike and boyish. So therefore, it keeps my spirit more pure, and always keeps me very truthful and direct. And then it forces me not to be able to really have a struggle with pride or anything, because I'm always struggling with the opposite of pride. So yeah, I'm not sure how much I will be able to change physically, but at the very worst, I'll just have to spend the rest of my life looking like someone like that. But otherwise, I'll continue to grow and become stronger. And then with the drumming, I've certainly seen mass improvements, because I remember the way I drum now. I used to watch that for many years and never was able to comprehend how to do it. So it's some sort of strange muscle memory that's unlocked by the gods at some point. So I'm not sure what has to coalesce, or I guess I have somewhat of an idea of what has to coalesce in order for that to be unlocked. But there definitely was other deities involved that brought my drumming to the level it is now. It definitely wasn't just through daily practice, because I practiced for many years and just got to like an intermediate level. But it was once I started connecting to other deities, etc., that I started moving to advanced forms of drumming and advanced understanding of music. And so yeah, the reason I move a bit slower is, yeah, I have struggled with alcoholism. Yeah, I did multiple points have my pancreas split open due to the poisoning from whatever was added to the alcohol. And so I figured I came to a point where I'd have to quit forever, but I thought that would be surely miserable. And plus, it was the gods who taught mankind how to make alcohol to begin with, so surely they weren't wrong. And but yeah, it turned out I learned how to brew my own. And so I thought, yeah, I'll brew my own 5 years from now when I can afford the equipment and whatever. And then it turned out the next week that I was off buying the equipment and then brewing my first batch, which was ruined, and I poisoned myself. But then from the subsequent batches, it turned out to be good. And as for science, I was able to drink like 3 liters of a hard lemonade that I made, and without any pancreatic trouble. So, and then the alcohol feeling was far better than anything from the stores. So that was good news. So at this point, I drink moderately, and I just brew small batches and just drink once a week. Yeah. So I mentioned previously in a post that I thought Taylor Swift was the greatest singer since David in the Bible. And you could say, how could you know that? But yeah, I just say that based off intuition, because yeah, her voice is just so magical and so alluring in a way that even the gods, the physical gods, would be floored by it, and are floored by it. And but with her singing. But yeah, I don't believe Taylor to be like a siren, because the Greek mythologies speak of the sirens who sing with an alluring voice to lead men off to their demise, where they're ultimately turned into pigs. But yeah, I do believe that Taylor is more akin to a prophetical type person, so that's why I've sought to improve her music as far as the percussion goes. And I feel that I did a good job in that, because I do have a good understanding of what sounds good in the percussion department and music in general, which is what drew me to her music, and then other great bands like Led Zeppelin, etc., etc. I would never recommend that you or other people try covering bands to the extent that I did without the band's approval. And so, yeah, I initially started off about the approval, but as time went on, I did come to interact in certain ways with some of the, I'm not going to say who, but with some people within the music industry. And then also before that, I was already known by the movie industry due to certain videos I used to make a long time ago that probably been lost on the internet. But that's when initially I got Hollywood's interest in some of the things I did, because I used to take clips from many videos and then put it together with music and make music videos, and then and almost create like a prophetical type image or a new storyline out of it. So first they probably gained their interest wondering whether the legality of what I was doing, and then after that it became more of a also interest due to the magical aspect of what was being shown. So with great movies, yeah, usually the preliminary they'll be based off some sort of a mythology or a religious system or ancient stories, and then sometimes they might be inspired by certain stories, local stories. So yeah, they are a very interesting conglomerate of information and inspiration. So that's how I always see movies. So with music and movies, you can never say if it's inspired by one thing in particular, because it's always inspired by hundreds of things, and then 100 more things that the creator might not even subconsciously know. So with the music, yeah, so I did, I was moving towards, actually moving towards some live events, but I was just pinned down due to some residual factors, as aforementioned. I gave a bit of insight on what caused some of the conflicts in my life, and how they started as a child for me, due to being raised by criminals and people that sought to fight me. And it all stemmed from a fear. I'm not sure if the people that I was around at a young age must have had some sort of prophecy that I was going to do something to them, but it turned out to be probably a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they gave me a reason to. But yeah, so as for the spiritual ventures, yeah, I can say that my person and then other spiritually advanced people, we've reached both the most evil, darkest places, and then also some of the most lightest places within the bounds of this realm. So yeah, I've been to the place that would be equated to ruling in hell. You always hear that term. People joke about how they'd want to rule in hell. Well, yeah, I've seen that place, and then I've also been up the spiritual side that's governed by angelic spiritual forces. So there are two separate sides. So as for the Bible, I mean, the New Testament seems to veer more towards the physical side of things, to do with extraterrestrials and whatnot, and then the Old Testament of the Bible has to actually do more with the spiritual side of things. So they seemingly ironic, and they are in opposition to each other. So it is almost like a yin yang type thing. But as for the Book of Revelation, it seems to be a mixture of the two. So it is quite fascinating. But yeah, I would say that the Bible is probably written by some sort of AI system. Yeah, so it is. I have a scientific, logical mind, so I would say there's a scientific, logical explanation between the way the Bible is written and certain aspects of it. So I did mention that I believe that this planet was initially was created to house us. So I do believe it is maintained by a sort of dormant AI machine system, and then the facilities that were used to clone our bodies are still here within the planet. So it is possible to actually bring people back from the dead once they pass. So I myself am a necromancer as well. So yeah, I would know ways to communicate with the deceased and possibly even bring them back. I've never thought to actually bring anyone back until recently, which was a strange thing. But it has always, since a young age, I've always wanted to venture to the underworld, and if I ever was able to make it there, I would either be allowed to be there, or otherwise I suppose I'd get my head smashed in by a sentry drone. Um, but yes, I do believe that these places exist. So I do hope to continue with the drumming and move forward with that. I do feel that certain things have been resolved, and part of the sorcery that I work does involve. It's not the bad kind of sorcery from the Bible. To clarify that, whenever the Bible mentions witchcraft or sorcery in a negative annotation or connotation, it's referring to people that try and gain power without submitting to God. So I myself am submitted to God and to the higher God as well. And but yeah, so with the sources that I practice, yeah, part of that is having my enemies reveal themselves and bring themselves into the open so that they can be easier dealt with. So yeah, that explains. So I would say that overall things are getting better, even though sometimes they'll seem worse. But back then, it was more like the Wild Wild West, and that was a lot worse because I was literally fighting against titans in the world. And so it really is things of biblical proportion and mythological proportion happening in the world at this time. So yeah, it begs the question of what do I follow? So the only religion I do literally follow would be like the Egyptian religion, and then Greek mythology is it has a more entertaining aspect to it, but it is real as well. And then as for the Old Testament, that is veiled in many ways, but it does adhere to the spiritual aspect, as I mentioned. And then the New Testament. Yeah, it a lot of times people that are an enemy type nature or a negative type nature will jive with the New Testament teachings.